Hi everyone, it's Maya here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're doing another exciting video and the topic is, am I too old to transition? This is a question that I get all the time on my channel, and I've had this channel on here for like around 10 years now, which is crazy. Now this is a very delicate topic to broach, and I want to do so with a lot of care and thoughtful consideration on my mind. And we're going to cover many different aspects. We're going to cover, from post-puberty until, 80s, 90s, knocking on death's door, because I feel like there's so many unique experiences out there. There's no way we're going to be able to cover all of them, but I can do my best and we're going to give it a go. If you're new here, hi, hello, I'm Maya. I'm a trans woman. I transitioned in, I want to say 2015 was when I began my medical journey, and we're going to get into my personal journey in a little bit. But if you're interested, hit the subscribe button, leave your bell notification on to get notifications. We all know how the algorithm here works sometimes, not in our favor. And you can see my other socials down below as well. I do Twitch streaming, I do Instagram, I do TikTok, everything and more. Transitioning is such a profoundly personal experience, and for myself, I come from, the background of transitioning to become a woman, and so that's the kind of perspective that I'm talking from today. I do want to preface this by saying that a lot of people spread false information, or they're jealous and just pretty hateful, and they assume that I have transitioned during puberty or prior to puberty. Now, that's not the case. If you are a little bit more educated and not so bitter, then you would probably notice that, there are some things that I've gone through that were, very irreversible post my first puberty. So a lot of people have this question. They want to know whether or not transitioning is worth it if you've already gone through the wrong puberty once. And I can relate to that because, shocker, like I transitioned when I was honestly close to 20. I started taking Lupron Depot injections, I want to say in the spring of 2015. So I was really like closer to 20 than I was 19, And that obviously stopped my hormone production right away. I eventually transitioned over to spironolactone because it was too expensive for me to continue with Lupron Depot. It was a more expensive blocker. And then I slowly started estrogen, and it was a long process. So I sometimes consider myself having transitioned at 20, even though I did start the medical process at 19. I wasn't on my full dosage till almost 20. So that's pretty much the journey that I started and when I started. Now, I won't deny the fact that I was pretty lucky genetically to be a very feminine person prior to transition. You can see my earliest video from before I even popped a hormone pill. Everything's exposed on here, and you can judge for yourself with what I had to work with personally. I did a lot of work on my voice as well, just on a personal level. I didn't train with anyone, and I can do a whole video on that topic as well if that's what you're interested in. I've never done one on that topic before, actually. But yeah, I trained myself over time. I think it's something that can kind of come to you naturally. We all have our customer service voice and all that stuff. So definitely something that I was conscious of in the beginning of my transition and then worked on over time. So all that to say, long story short, I transitioned after my first puberty was complete. Like I went to my doctors and they identified me at the last stage of puberty. So, there's not really anything up for discussion with regard to that. I know there are a lot of people out there that say like, oh, you're so privileged. Like you had all this money to transition. You had all this support. You had, all the access. You transitioned early. And it's like, no, that's not the case. I actually didn't come from privilege. I didn't come from money. I did everything myself. I went to a walk-in clinic. I was, meeting with doctors after hours to try to get access to HRT. Like, you know what I mean? I did it the grassroots way. I was not someone who transitioned during a time of trans prosperity. There wasn't a lot of awareness about it at the time, and I was pretty much the only person I knew at my school that was doing it, and I did it during my undergrad, and so it was kind of scary that way. But I think that, we all have our own journeys, we all have our own obstacles. If you try to always compare yourself and say that someone else had it easier or better, then you're never going to be living a happier life because you're just going to be making excuses for why you suck. There are so many options out there for you, and I think one of the most important things that we have to touch on today is that you have to consider what you're looking for from transition, Depending how old you are, you may not have as easy a time assimilating and passing in society as the gender that you identify as once you begin your transition. You may require way more surgeries. It may cost way more money, So you have to consider all of these things. If just on a base level, you just want to wear what you want to wear, be who you want to be, and you don't give an F about what anyone thinks, then just do that, you know, at any age. You don't have to, you know, have a certain age when you decide to do it, XYZ. Like, you're just being yourself, you know, and that's what's most important to you. You're not doing it for anyone else. That being said, I think what we need to talk about a little bit more is if you do desire to pass more as the, you know, gender that you identify with and you know, undergo medical transition, there's a lot to consider. Specifically with age, something that you have to consider is the hormonal aspect. As we get older, we're more prone to heart disease, pulmonary embolisms, all sorts of different side effects. You have to discuss this with your doctor, but a lot of older trans individuals aren't able to go on hormones as often because of their physiology. So I definitely recommend looking into that and consulting your doctor before, you know, announcing to the world that you're trans. And then if you can't even, you know, access the hormones you want or begin the transition that you want, it might be, you know, for naught. So definitely something you have to consider. I definitely recommend like a covert approach in the beginning, doing your research, figuring out what would make you happy and deciding on your own before you, you know, break the news and break the ice. Just so that you're prepared when people have questions, just so that you're prepared when, you know, it's time to take those medical steps. That being said, another topic that always comes up is family. I have existing family, you know, I have children, I have sometimes a wife or sometimes a husband. How will this affect them, you know? And there's people all the time that are transitioning regardless of their family situation. I think we all reach a point in our lives where we have to say, okay, wait a minute, I need to actually do what's best for me in this moment. And you have to decide if that's going to be something that's worth it for you, or if it's something that's going to negatively impact your family to a degree that maybe you should wait a little bit longer, you know? It's never too late to be yourself, and trying to like rush into something is never a good thing. You always want to think how it's going to affect others as well. That being said, I think that if you truly have a supportive family and loved ones in your life, whether it's a spouse or children or whoever, I would hope that they would accept you with open arms and you wouldn't feel ashamed to be who you are. I think there's a lot of examples out there of how to do it and how not to do it. And you also shouldn't be surprised if your partner no longer wishes to stay with you, because when you're changing gender and you want to be validated as your new gender, that might not be something that your partner's attracted to. And that's something you're going to have to accept. Your family will never be the way that it once was, you know? So there's so much to consider there. I don't personally have the experience of having started a family or anything like that. For me, it was more important to do this earlier on. I do think it's a little bit more sucky for you as a person to do this after you've, you know, married someone, because hey, you've like committed to them as who you were when you got married, and you're having children with them, and they're, you know, pretty locked down with you, and now you want to drop a bomb like this. I think that's pretty shitty that like you didn't have the bravery and the courage to do this beforehand. But obviously, like, I know we all come from different circumstances, and like maybe this just wasn't an option for you, or you didn't have awareness to describe your feelings. So I'm not going to judge from that perspective, but just know that some people might be seeing it that way, you know? Like, why wasn't this something you could have addressed sooner? It's the same, you know, when there's like gay men and heterosexual relationships with women, and instead of being honest with themselves and not, you know, wasting the woman's time and being a complete asshole, they end up sometimes even having extramarital affairs with men and even infect their partner with STIs and things like that. So we always want to, you know, have compassion and empathy for others if we expect the same in return. You know, you can't transition and expect everyone to get it like that, and then at the same time not have any patience for people who need to adjust. Come on up, sir. Little Elio wants to join the video, my little puffy poodle. Another thing I want to touch on is that older generations of people who are transitioning, it's much more likely that you are going to encounter bigotry, because younger generations are more aware and they're more informed about what it means to be trans, or to, you know, not really fit on the gender stereotypes. And so when you are encountering people from your demographic, I would say maybe the 40 to 50 plus community and up, you might meet a lot of derision or confusion, or, you know, people that are weirded out by you and they don't have the capacity or the space or time to grow. You will be surprised. Like, people do, you know, they do always change. We're always evolving. I would always give people the benefit of the doubt and the opportunity to change and grow. But I do recognize that, you know, older generations are a lot more stubborn in their ways and they're not as informed, especially with, you know, the media today. I would consider, you know, a transition that's like after 50 to be something that's more so for yourself as an individual. That's not to say like you can't go out and date and do whatever you want, but at that point in your life, I feel like you'd be doing anything like this just for yourself and not necessarily having a future partnership in mind or XYZ, you know? Like you should be doing it for yourself first and foremost at any chapter of your life, but I think it's a lot more dangerous surgery wise and hormone wise once you're older. So you have to really, you know, consider why you're doing this and if you're going to achieve the results that you want. There's so many examples out there of people who transition regardless of their background and regardless of whether or not they're going to pass, and they seem to be so much happier. And so I definitely recommend you check them out. I don't have like 100% recommendations for you guys because, as we know, everyone, you know, gets canceled or called out or whatever you want to call it, you know, these days. So like, I don't even care about that stuff anymore. But I did know on TikTok, I was like scrolling through and I came across someone, I believe her name's Gabby Tefty. And she used to be, I think, a like, you know, wrestling superstar. And she came from this like bodybuilding background and like just the complete opposite of like what you would expect someone to transition, and she's made it work for her. She's had her, you know, facial feminization surgery. I think she might have had implants. I don't know what else, but you know, she's making her transition work to her and work to what she wants to accomplish. And I think that that's such an example for anyone to say, you know what, like, doesn't matter your background or who you are, you can be who you want to be today regardless. I do want to be realistic though about the hormone situation. They say that, you know, estrogen can give, but it can't take away. So if you have a full beard, if you have a large musculoskeletal structure, whatever, those aren't things that are necessarily going to change. I've seen like neurotic individuals come on my page and say that they like got shorter by 2 inches, their physical rib cages shrunk, their feet size shrunk by 2 sizes. And to that I say that's just not possible. It makes no sense. Do you have osteoporosis, scoliosis? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, it doesn't really compute with me. Like your bones aren't just gonna like shrink unless you have like a severe like medical emergency. That being said, maybe you had inflammation that went down, maybe your muscle mass went down, I don't know. But estrogen will affect your fat distribution, your muscle creation, I guess, your toned qualities in your body. It will soften your skin and it will thin out your body hair, but it's not going to, you know, remove your beard. It's not going to chop off your winky. It's, you know, it's not going to do any of those things. Like, you have to be really realistic about what you can expect. I have a lot of people that come on my page and they say like, oh, I just popped my first hormone pill. I can't wait to look like you. And I'm like, you're not going to look like me because A, you're not me. You don't have my genetics. You weren't born me. You're going to look like a slightly more feminized version of yourself. And I think that's, you know, the most realistic advice that I can offer with regard to hormone pills. Now, just to circle back to one of the points that I made earlier about how when you're older, your transition should be mostly for yourself. Why I say that is because sometimes I notice that individuals who transition in the older portion of their lives, it's almost more performative in a sense. Like they want to wear the makeup and the wig and the whatever and cross-dress in a sense in order to have a public display. And like, I don't know, that's kind of, I feel like it could go wrong for you if that's your idea of transitioning. It could be taken the wrong way, especially if you're trying to make your way into women's private spaces, such as the washroom or the change room at the gym. I'm sure a lot of us saw the example of that woman who, like, you know, a few weeks prior was an old man, and I believe, according to the person who was like monitoring the situation, their wife had died, and after their wife died, they decided to transition and, you know, put on some lipstick, their wife's earrings, and then like go into the women's change room at the gym. And it's like, you're literally an old man, you know, with a wrinkled old sausage putting on lip gloss to get into the woman's change room. Like, you're setting such a bad example. Are you even trans, you delusional crazy person? Like, that's not something that we claim here, you know? When you transition at that age or you make that choice, you do so for yourself, not to get into women's spaces, not to get into the women's washroom. You know, we've all seen the creeps and they're out there. Every demographic has creeps. There's creepy women that were born women. There's creepy men that were born men. There's creepy trans people or allegedly trans people. It's going to be across any community, so it's not just specific to us, you know? We always get painted with that brush stroke, but it's wild. So, you know, like, we don't claim that. You have to really evaluate like what you're doing and why you're doing it, and really say to yourself, like, is this really a space that I should be in, or am I making women uncomfortable by going into a space and, you know, looking like a full man with just, you know, a pair of earrings and a lip gloss? Why is that your priority to go into women's spaces? You really need to question that, and it does kind of appear a little predatory from the outside. Sorry for that rant, you guys, but I just feel like I always have to call it out whenever it comes up in discussion, because I just don't support that in any way. Like, I myself felt like I needed a lot of support in order to first start accessing women's spaces, even when I, you know, passed to a certain extent, just because I wanted to be respectful, you know? Women in general are a often vulnerable population. You don't want to be adding to the stress of that. And so you have to do, you know, what's right socially and in the moment, and not necessarily just like what fits for you the best. Because I hate this, like, you know, self-centered quality that a lot of trans individuals can have, where they hold their own comfortability and their own identity in the highest regard, above all else, and they talk down on others, or they use stereotypes in order to define themselves. And that's never something that you want in your transition. You want to retain the aspects of yourself that you valued from beforehand and just change the cover, you know? That's the vibe I think that we go for when we transition. We're not trying to become some like performance art stereotype of what it means to be a woman. We're not doing a drag show. And I think that, you know, it speaks for itself when you are just existing in your comfort and in your space as who you are, you know? You don't have to perform for anyone. You're just being your authentic self for the first time. Just in summary, you are never too old to transition and be yourself. You might be, you know, at an age where it's more dangerous to medically transition, and that's something you'd have to discuss with your doctor. But, you know, if you're leading a healthy lifestyle, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to, even at an older age. And there's many different methods of receiving HRT that aren't as harmful to your liver, such as like patches or, you know, injections and things like that. So there's always alternatives. Discuss it with your doctor or your healthcare provider. Another really, you know, hopeful sentiment that I want to add to this discussion is that as men and women age, we slowly lose our sexual dimorphism, in the sense that our hormone levels deplete and we almost become one and the same. Women go through menopause and their estrogen levels plummet. They might start noticing little facial hairs sprouting. They might start noticing, you know, more masculinizing qualities to their body and, you know, to their demeanor. And then for men as well, the testosterone levels drop. You might notice, you know, more frail bones, loss of muscle tone, a feminizing, if you will. And so to that, I say you're almost, you know, more viable at a certain age to transition and to pass, because we all kind of blend into one at the end of our lives. And it's one of those things where, you know, we're all human first and our genders kind of fall away. We no longer are upholding these, you know, matriarchal, patriarchal roles in society, and we're just existing as the elderly. So I hope for that level of peace anyways when I reach that age myself. And I think there's something so beautiful about aging. And so if you're worried that there's no point in transitioning because you're old now, well, honestly, like, age is beautiful. Just because, you know, Western society tells you these days that it's like something to try to reverse or to cover up, I don't think that that's the case at all. Like, throughout, you know, the thousands of years that humans have been on Earth, only recently have we stopped revering our elders so much, you know, for wisdom and for life and for, you know, all that they've done to get us to where we are today. And that's a big shout out as well to all the trans elders in the community space. There's a few of them online you can look into as well. Some are on TikTok, and hearing about their experiences is so invaluable. Anyways, you guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope it inspired you if you needed that little bit of inspiration to get things going. And if you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, bell notification button. I've got Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, everything down below. I upload content here all the time, and I do all sorts of different types of content. If you have any video recommendations, just leave them down below and I will get to them. This is like a lifestyle channel. This is a trans channel. This is a, you know, everything in between. This is a Maya V. Henry channel, and this is what you're gonna get. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you next time.